Okay, we've already done box plot. So now let's do Z-score. Okay. Remember, plus or minus 3 Z-score is reasonable. Beyond that would be problematic. So you can do Z-score. Okay. And we do Z-score using scale. Okay. So scale is a generic function whose default method centers and or scales the columns here. So that means it's going to subtract by mean and then divide by the standard deviation. So that's what scale does. So scale, and then say housing.df, and let's do scale only for okay. So remember, we have the first column is the target, total value. And then we know that we have last two columns are non-numeric. You can compute Z-score only for numeric columns. The last two are fireplace and remodel. Remodel is already character variable, but fireplace is ordinal variable. So let's say that we don't want 1, 13, 14. Okay. All right. So let's run that. Okay. So now we have Z-scores. Let's look at Z-scores here. See, everything is converted to Z-score. Okay. So scale creates Z-score except for those three columns. Now we want to identify all the rows. Okay, so each row has several Z-scores, right? We want to see whether there are any Z-scores that are outside plus or minus 3, right? And we want to then look at those observations. So how do we do that? Okay, the code for that, I'm going to build it one step at a time. Okay. So if we did ABS Z-scores, okay, so that's going to make this into an absolute value, right? Minus will become plus, plus will stay plus. Now we want to see, okay, let's look at that. See, they're all positive ones. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Okay, and then we want to see whether it is greater than 3. So you get true or false. So each row is going to take each item, make it into an absolute value, and see whether it is greater than 3. If it is greater than 3, true. No, it's false. Okay. All right. But we want to now see whether in any row there is at least one true. Then we want to look at it. Okay. If a row is all false, so that means they are all within plus or minus 3. Okay. So what we can do is there is a code called row sums. Okay. what row sum will do, it will sum the entire row. Now remember, true is 1, false is 0. Okay. The numeric value for true and false, true is 1, false is 0. So if this row sum is greater than 0, okay, if they're all false, then this row sum will be 0. If there is at least one true, then that value will be greater than 0. Okay. All right. So it tells you for each row whether this is true or not. Okay. Now all we have to do now is to use this as a mask. So what we're going to do is do ZScores, okay, and so if this is true, okay, that row and all the columns will get selected. If this is not true, it will be ignored because it will be false. Yeah.
So is that checking if it's between 0 and 3? Is it checking to see if the number in the data frame is between 0 and 3?
Okay, so we are doing it step by step, right? So here is the Z-score. So you take each row and each number in the row to see whether the absolute value is greater than 3. Okay, whether it is outside plus or minus 3. Okay. Now row sum, okay, this part, okay, in a row it will take each number and make it into true or false. Okay. Row sums will sum that row, the trues and the false, and the numeric value for true is 1, for false is 0. So row sums will add them all up, and if that sum is 0, then everything is good. There is no outlier. Okay. But if it is greater than 0, then there is an outlier. So you're checking, sum that and see whether it is greater than 0, true or false, right? So that is your mask. If it is true, then that row from Z-scores will be displayed. Okay. So it has quite a lot of 360 rows that has greater than 3 on either side. Okay. If you change this number from 3 to a larger number, then fewer rows will get selected. So we can then look at it more closely. So let's change it to okay, let's change that to value 9, and then you can see, and there are just a few, 6 of them, and if you examine the row, you see that here is something which is way outside. Okay, each row will have at least one number that would be larger than 9. So second one, what is it? I don't know. There it is. 10. So here is. So the rest of them are here in large square feet. They are all greater than 9. Okay. So you find Z-score using the scale function, okay, and then examine the Z-scores, figure out which rows contain at least one Z-score that is outside the normal limits of plus or minus 3. But if you want to be a little more relaxed, so you can make it like 4 or 5 or 6. Okay. And then that would select and use it here, and that'll highlight, that'll give you the rows containing those extreme values. Then you can examine them more closely. Okay, so this is outliers.